Hi there. So we have talked about templates in the past. Now we will focus into orchestral templates and some tips and tricks how to create them. Also 3 different ways of doing them, a kind of a basic way, then a bit more advanced way, and then a real professional way using external DSP software from Vienna Ensemble Pro. So let's get going with Studio One and see how to create these orchestral templates in Studio One. Okay, so I have done some preparations in Studio One in order to fast track this session a bit. So let's start with the basic way of creating an orchestral template in Studio One. And that is pretty much that you have a single instrument on a single track, and then you have you basically have multiple tracks with the same instrument configured for different instruments in orchestra. So in here I have actually used Spitfire Audio Studio Orchestra, BBC Symphony Orchestra, and specifically Discovery edition that is free. So you can actually download this for free and get started with orchestral compositions. This basically gives all the basic sounds from the orchestra. So you get strings, you get basically brasses, woodwinds, and percussions. So with this you can get going and start practicing that. So I have used this as a base for the template as well in the case of a simple setup, because here you can see that now when I go from a track to another, it changes the configuration. So I have violins 1, 2, violas, cellis, and basses. So that's how I have actually created them, and that's quite straightforward in a sense. I have already shown how to create tracks with instruments, so I will not go into that, but I will highlight these areas of like how can you create these. One good practice when creating orchestral template is to use folders, so that once you have an extensive template you can easily also hide things and get things visual. There are also very good macros in Studio One to kind of get specific tracks visual and things, so that you should actually look at. I will not go into the macros at this time. I will just explain the layout of the orchestral template and what kind of things you could use there. Another thing is that when you have a lot of tracks, of course, and a lot of instrument, that will also consume your memory and a CPU. So in some cases you would like to kind of like disable the track so that it doesn't eat up your memory and it doesn't take your CPU. So in Studio One you have a functionality to kind of disable and enable track. So as you can now see that I disabled this violin track, so you will hear nothing, but then when I enable it, it again plays. And if I disable it, it doesn't basically consume memory nor the CPU. So that's a good way of playing out with a kind of humongous templates, so that you can basically select multiple tracks, like let's go here and then disable them all. So now the whole group of strings, BBC strings, is disabled, and that's a very convenient way of working. Also, one thing, when you save the template, like when I save this project as a template, you might actually start all the instruments disabled. So it will then load fast because it will just load the template and no instrument. And then one by one, if you start using violas or whatever, you can then enable the track and start basically composing and writing things into that. Another thing, what we discussed about the folders, but then how to practically create them, it's quite straightforward in Studio One. You basically go and select the tracks, and then you have a keyboard shortcut, or you can basically then from here you can say that, you know, back a folder, so that it backs the tracks into a folder, and like it did here. You could do the same for the keyboard shortcut as well, but now we have a folder that in this case has BBC woodwinds, and then if we open the folder, well, now we see the tracks, the woodwinds within that, and we can then start playing on those. So using folders, disabling tracks when you don't need them, and also at start it might actually make sense to upload the load the template and start your work instantly. So these are kind of tricks and tips and tricks regarding on doing templates in a simple manner. Then of course here with Studio One you have an ability also to make this as a bus. So if you would like to sum everything into a single track, so for example if you would like to sum all the strings, let's go and enable them all. If you like to sum all them, you can basically say that add a bus channel, and then now you will see that you got also volume control for the bus itself, and then secondly you can see that in the mixture that is basically these all the strings are now routed into this BBC strings bus, as you see from here. So then of course if I'm playing a single instrument, it gets routed to the bus, and from bus to the main. So that's again like if you want to do a summing and you want to do some processing for all your strings, then this is the way to do it in Studio One. Then another way of building template is then using instruments that can host multiple instruments within it. For that I have taken an example with native instrument Kontakt, and into Kontakt I have already loaded several instruments, because with Kontakt you have an ability that in a single instance of a Kontakt you can have multiple Kontakt instruments. Like in my case I have now strings A from Albion Neo, the strings B, woodwinds, and brass. And to prepare Kontakt to be used in this way as single instance multiple instrument, you need to do a few tricks. One thing is that you need to basically here define how the MIDI is routed, so that for this instrument it comes from A channel 1, for the second it comes from A channel 2, and then 3 and 4, so that each instrument within Kontakt has their own MIDI channel, so then you can play them individually from the Studio One. Another thing that you need to do is that you need to go here and go into the outputs. By default it does route everything into one, but then if you want to do so that every instrument within Kontakt is routed to its own channel out, you can go into the batch functions, and here you have a very simple way of doing that. Basically it says clear output section and create one individual channel for each loaded instrument, and when you click on that it will go and create a track for each instrument, and it will also automatically route the audio output into these channels that it just created. So that's a very easy way of doing it. Then in Studio One, when you are basically here with the Kontakt installed, what you need to do in order to get into a multiple multiple audio channels is that you actually need to go here and enable them. So you basically enable aux 1, 2, 3, and 4, so that you have all those set up. And now you can see here that you have they got added on here. So what I can do now is that if I play over here, I hear kind of nothing, because it basically goes into a contact event input. Let me see, contact event input 1, but no audio gets routed yet into. But if I go and let me see, yeah, those are now assigned correctly. And now the first audio, it's actually pretty silent, so it gets routed into the first section. So if I go over here, I can see that it does play, but very silently. So let's put some dynamics on and expression on. So we start to hear. Of course, I can always increase also the volume in the instrument and let it, or I could do it also here in the channel. So that is how I now can play the strings from here. But then if I would like to play the other instruments, I would need to actually create a track. So so in order to do that is this, that I actually say that this is neo string 1, and then this would actually then represent neo string 2. And for this I actually now need to go over here and create a another instrument track. So I basically could duplicate the track, but I want to create an empty instrument track. So basically that's what I'm gonna do. So let me see, I'll just go and press plus here and do an instrument track, and this would I call now a neo strings 2. And this will get routed into the contact now, of course, but now into the input of second input. So now I also need to open up the inspector and see that basically what is the channel that is representing now this one is that it's neo strings 1. So I want to actually go and change this into neo string 2. So now if I click the first one, it will be sounding from there, but then if I go here, now I get the second strings. And similarly, I would then of course need to do the same for all of these. So then let's go and see. I think next I had the brasses, so I had strings A, B, then okay, I had woodwinds. So let's do one more just to kind of repeat. So this is neo woods, and now in here I would need to basically again go and say that this is contact, and then it's not event input 2 and it's 3. And here I would say that okay, the audio is linked into neo woods. So when I ever select a channel, it will basically then also or track, it will also select the right channel. and now I hear the woods. So then I could basically go here and say no woods. And similarly, if I'll just take the mixer away. So I could basically then color these based on the same principle that I had, that strings are in green. I could basically play around with certain colors here, but and make these a bit different green, like a darker green, or yeah, like even very dark green. Then woods I had in blue, and then brasses in green. And then again, if I would like to now make this into a folder, then I can go over here and right click and say that, you know, back a folder, or then I can press just the keyboard shortcut and it will create a folder for me. And the folder I can basically color, for example, in a way that it's a gray one, because it's an instrument folder. So and I name it Albion Neo, as I have all Albion Neo instruments now, like the ones that I have configured in here. So that's basically it when it comes to a bit more advanced way of doing it, using Kontakt and Kontakt libraries and Kontakt instrument, so that one instance is hosting multiple instruments, and then you are just routing MIDI and audio from there and into Kontakt respectively, so that you can play the right instrument that you want to use. And as you can see, the audio routing is going correctly here as well. So yeah, that's how to do a template utilizing a Kontakt type of an instrument, where you can have multiple instruments within one instance of it. Okay. So in the last part, we will look into real advanced way of doing and using orchestral instruments in your Studio One template. And that is a way, of course, to also offload your processing into another instance. In this case, I'm using actually Vienna Ensemble Pro Server 7, where I can actually create a setup where I have all the instruments preloaded. So I have violin 1, 2, viola, cellos, and basses. Then I have done another set of, as an example, other set of woodwinds. So I have a piccolo, flute, and oboe. And then I have basically the MIDI routings in, so 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. You can change it from here. And again, I have an output routing going from 3 to 10. In woodwinds and in strings equally from 3, 4 to 13 and 14, and respectively I have mapped the MIDI information to come in on those channels. So if we now dive into Studio One and see how to utilize then this in your template configuration. First, of course, you need to see that you are doing the MIDI into the right instance of it, and in this case it's the first one. So I should basically now hear the violins playing from it. So if I go here, you can see that the processing actually takes place in here, and it gets transferred into Studio One. So all the processing is really taking place. Of course, you can send all these MIDI commands into Vienna Ensemble Pro from Studio One, so you don't really need to play around here. This is just hosting the instruments and offloading the DSP from Studio One. So let's basically continue this configuration a bit. So this was basically VSL. This was violin 1, and so it was violin 1 and violin 2. I could basically also go directly and take like double basses, but let's do it in a way that I will use these 3 first ones in that respect as they have been configured here. So let's use the violin 1, the violin 2, and then the next one in there was viola. So let's configure those as an example, and then I will add another instance of Vienna Ensemble Pro into Studio One, linking that into the woodwinds, just to show how it kind of happens in a case if you want to do this type of a professional template and offload your DSP into. So here basically then of course you need to go and select another channel, and now basically you are getting the second violins playing, as you can see from here, and so then you can also rename this track. And this is violin 2. And then last but not least was basically this one that goes into 1 and 3. And when I now play, I see violas playing, and then I can again name the track respectively. So now I have the viola and violins configured, and then I have all that setting is now basically in place. And when I select the track, it will select a right channel for me, and I can basically wait a second. It actually doesn't, so I need to do a bit of a change here. This is basically, this is the VSL instant, and this is actually violin 1. I could do it this a bit differently as well, but I'll just fix it now like here. And this was VSL viola. And now of course here I would need to basically do the routing so that they go correctly. So this is actually into violin 1. So so let's go and fix it. And then this one actually goes into violin 2. And then the last but not least is basically then the viola. So now they are correctly mapped. Yep, and then of course you can create a folder for these as well, and say that these are basically VSL strings like this. And then if you open that folder, you can see them in here, and let's go and change them green. So yeah, but then if you'd like to now go and add another instance of like you would like to also use woodwinds, what in this case you will actually you will need to do is that you will need to go and load another set of a Vienna Ensemble Pro plugin. So you go and load that in, and then in here you now need to connect into the instance of woodwinds. So you do that, and then when you have connected, you can basically then do again the same thing over again. So now I have Vienna Ensemble Pro 2, where I need to go and enable the channels that I want to use. And similarly, I would like to then add a track for these to be used in my composition. So I will go and create a I think it is enough to create only one in this case, because this I should basically be routing into 3 and 4, and this I should be routing into okay, let's go from here. Here, and let's see how it goes. It should go 5 and 6 like this. So now I should have the first instance of it and the second instance of it, and I can actually get rid of this. Actually, it's funny that it placed like that. Oh, it should be. No, it is all messed up. Hello. What the heck? This is now kind of getting a bit out of hands, because this should be okay. This should be now in, and then this guy should be actually now the instance of the second one. And let's change the color to blue one as woodwinds. And then now if I go over here, I hear the woodwinds, and in this case I now hear basically piccolo. And then if I go here, okay, I haven't routed the MIDI correctly, so I need to go there. And now if I look here, I get flute. So this one would be then, and let's name it VSL. And this one is, and now we could put this into a folder again and call that like VSL woods, and color it blue. So now we are systematic with our coloring, okay, and let's also change these respectively so that they are all the same color. Okay, so now I have all that configured. So and now in this case, which is really advanced, I'm using external server to offload the DSP from the Studio One to basically to Vienna Ensemble Pro server where the instruments are running. Okay, and then of course now when everything is set and done, then you would go and save this as a template. So you pretty much have it here, and you say save as a template. And then next time when you start a new project, you can bring this in easily, and you don't need to reconfigure everything again, because it can be very time consuming, as you see, to build all these folders, routings, then bring all the instruments that you need for orchestral. So in this case, the template is definitely needed, and these are the ways of doing it. Alrighty, so that was how to create orchestral template in the Studio One. And we looked into 3 different ways of doing it. The simple one where you have an instrument per track. It's easy to build, easy to route audio, but it can consume memory and CPU. But if you kind of disable the tracks, then you can manage less memory, less CPU when you only use the tracks that you use in your composition. A second way was a bit more advanced, to use Kontakt and Kontakt player to load multiple instances of instruments into it. So you have one instance of Kontakt but multiple instruments in it, and then doing the routing of audio and MIDI accordingly. The last but not least was a real professional way of doing it, where you use a DSP server like Vienna Ensemble Pro to offload your instruments to the other instance, or even to another server, so that you only do kind of effect processing in your digital audio workstation machine, in this case the machine that is running Studio One, and then you offload everything to your network machine, or in this case I just used it within my same system, so that was just an example. Anyway, if you like the content, so please remember to subscribe for the channel. Next we will dive into how to do these templates in Luna. It will be a bit more tricky because it's still kind of limited in capabilities, but let's at least look what can be done in Luna. Alright, thanks for watching. Bye now.